Hey guys, and welcome back again to Rage Gaming and more Shadow of the Erdtree. As always then, I've got another set of things you might not know about, centered of course around the DLC mainly, that we're covering the full game a little bit here and there. Lots of these come from suggestions in the comments, and community finds, or just stuff we've noticed, anything from weird, useful, or just interesting topics. So let's get started with today's episode. First up today then, we've got something a little different, but something I definitely find interesting and is relevant to be aware of. Bandai Namco was the publisher for From Software for international sales, and would, appear to still be, but the trademark ownership for Elden Ring used to be shared, partly owned by, yes, Bandai. About a year ago now, From Software were able to claim full ownership though, I imagine after a hefty payment. It's interesting and confusing to think about, say, how Sony has control over, say, Demon Souls and Bloodborne IPs, which is a big part of why we don't have a Bloodborne remake or even remaster at this point, despite that massive outcry and interest for that. Even after the success of Demon Souls, I don't get it. No one does. But there must be some kind of conflict or legal thing that's going on that we don't know about that must be preventing what would seem an obvious success. Even Miyazaki's talked about it. Anyway, not the point. Ownership of IPs is definitely a complicated thing. So you'd think it'd be a huge win for From Software to have full ownership of Elden Ring. I guess this means they could do what they want with the IP from here on out, if they want to release remakes or remasters or whatever. Though I'm not convinced Bandai was ever going to be a problem for something like that, compared to what Sony clearly has been. Anyway, I bring this up today because Bandai Namco just reported an insane 553% increase in profits over the last quarter, I believe. And hey, obviously they credit this massively to Elden Ring's DLC Shadow of the Erdtree. It would appear that the joint ownership ended after the DLC was planned, so they must still get that profit. It must still be tied to them. All the sales and merchandise must still go to them, at least a percent. So they still benefited massively from the DLC despite that change, and seemingly will continue to reap the rewards of at least Shadow of the Erdtree. But does that mean Elden Ring's future as an IP, or whatever success it has, will purely all go to From Software now? Bandai surely can't want that with the massive increase of profits after the DLC just made it into that report, like it had that much of an impact. Apparently over 5 million copies of the DLC have already sold, and that's only what we know of. It's probably a lot more than that. It's been a massive success beyond even other mainstream game releases, like full game releases, not just DLC. It's that much of a staggering success in this industry that you've got to imagine Bandai is sad to lose at least that part ownership. It obviously all follows after Miyazaki talked about how they want to be a much bigger, more functional company at producing games. Like they want to produce more games, and he wants to trust other people to direct a lot more, and he just kind of oversees everything. We are expecting to see more IPs out of them. This was discussed, I think, about a year and a half ago now, so maybe we'll start to see the fruits of all of this in the coming days. Anyway, congrats to Bandai on that major profit, but I wonder if that's the last they're going to see of it. Alright, moving on to our next thing for today's episode. A pretty insane concept. Cheesing Radahn where he's not even able to fight you. I'm not talking about that silly way people are making themselves iron walls with a big shield and they're just poking while blocking forever. No, this is where he doesn't ever fight you. He's using a combination of two things. Assassin's Gambit, an Asher Wall that makes you hard to see, half invisible, as well as Unseen Form, a sorcery that does basically the same thing. And it would appear that they're able to stack and have more of an effect because of that. So as you can see, I'm able to enter the room and Radahn just stands there, looking at me, I guess, but can't really see me. And eventually he turns around and starts pathing to the center of the room, or the bottom of the stairs rather, and then he's just going to stand there. What this then allows you to do is go all the way around the outer wall, maintaining those buffs, and get in position to throw some poison pots and some rot pots at him. I want to credit the YouTuber Sheng Qian, who actually showcased this. Seemingly he discovered this, and after he posted that video, I got a lot of people saying, you need to check out this is ridiculous. Now, looking at Sheng's gameplay, he manages to get all the way around, he throws the pots, he applies poison and rot to the target, and then instantly applies a Mimic Veil. I guess you could just maintain Unseen Form and the Assassin's Gambit combo, but it costs FP and, it's kind of annoying. Whereas if you put the Mimic Veil on, you don't have to worry anymore. You press it once and that's it. As you can see, once the boss gets to half health, you transition to phase 2, you both teleport to your respective spots, but the fight isn't continuing. You're still a Mimic Veil, so he's not going to attack you. But something else happens, something really weird. He passes around kind of randomly, not taking damage anymore, by the way, but then after a period, just suddenly dies. Like his AI decides, I don't get it, where is he? I give up. It's really weird. Pretty cool stuff from Sheng. Obviously, I had to give it a go. I did it. It works. I walked in. I walked all the way around. I got to the same position. I aimed up. I threw the pots. The first pot hit, and then Radahn instantly would aggro and run over and hit me. No matter what I seemed to do, I could not get him to not instantly aggro on me, even though I was following the exact outline of what Sheng was explaining. But I still believe this is a real thing you can do, and I just must have something wrong, but I can't work out what. The reason for that is all the comments on Sheng's video say, yeah, this works. I tried this today, an hour ago. People live commenting that. Even people were saying in higher levels of New Game Plus where, you know, the resistances and such are going to be higher, it still worked. They just had to throw an extra pot of either type. So it is strange. I wonder what I'm doing wrong. So if you guys have any advice, maybe we can get people to understand this. If anyone's really struggling with Radahn, it would be nice to have like a guaranteed cheese method, I suppose. But it obviously did work, or still does, and it is a very interesting thing that you could potentially do. Next up then, a fantastic realization by Reddit user XUMetaXD, who posted this little clip about Vengal, talking about how his moveset is actually very familiar these days. As it seems, Radahn's base moveset and attack style may have been brought forward by this unique enemy and boss that you'd find in Dark Souls 2. This is the body of Vengal, and it's an iconic NPC you meet in the game. You actually find two versions of him, the body, but then you also find his head, working as an NPC that's alive on this pile of rubble. You can have a whole progression with him, you can trade with him, just his head. The body wanders the woods, attacking anything it finds. And that's what you're looking at here. His headless body swinging at you based on instinct. Pretty cool lore, but that aside, the moveset, the two weapons, it's very familiar. Similar, in fact, to the 1-2 swing combo and then the double swipe to follow that we see Radahn do. This, by comparison, is so slow. The pace we're used to today is just so much faster. People in the comments of the Reddit thread were saying this is like a turn-based combat by comparison to what we're used to. These days, especially Consort Radahn, the turn-based combat is basically it's the boss's turn and you never get one. But after all these many years of game dev, Elden Ring, I think, is the peak version of reused assets. Sure, a lot of stuff was used again and again for previous games, but I think most every time it was adapted and changed in big, relevant, major ways that it's, changed and improved in a lot of ways. And I think that's a big part of what it made it possible for a game this massive to exist. This many bosses and enemies, the density, the variety. Without all that to draw from, all the different units they would have otherwise never used again, it is a really cool thing to look at. Like looking at the OG version of Radahn in Dark Souls 2. So credit to Meta for realizing and acknowledging that so we could look at it. Okay, next up, just a quick one, and it's again involving Consort Radahn because that's this episode apparently. There's a little animation that plays when you land the true killing blow that I actually never noticed. I was made aware of it by this Reddit post about it by Drunken Corpse 666. If we take a good look at the Consort as he dies, we can see that Radahn holds up one sword into the air like a final salute. But Miquella, if you pay attention to him, he turns to Radahn. Turning to his face, he begins to wrap his arms around his head. Not in like an aggressive way, he's just literally leaning in for what appears to be a final embrace, a hug, like a final goodbye as they both fade into nothing. And I don't know how I feel about it. Do you think that's like a little apology he's doing, or one final imprinting himself on Radahn, who has no say in it? My favorite comment in the thread about it is that Miquella is in fact whispering "get good" into his ear, or maybe something like skill issue, that would work too. But either way, Radahn's saluting, Miquella is hugging, and they're both fading away. And a very subtle, neat animation that I just never noticed. Now for this one, let's do something totally different. Really, this is just a Radahn themed episode. In any case, this comes from the comments of one of our videos by BKMY215. They tell us that there's a weird thing you can spot here in this location. On the way up from the stairs, actually head back down. From here we have quite the view just around, but one thing obviously we see is the Bale area, the jagged peaks. But there's something weird visually occurring over there. So as you can see, we've got the jagged peaks, nothing going on, just an empty region, whatever, just a cool view. But according to BKMY, if you zoom in and look to the bottom right, roughly around this location, you'll spot something a little bit strange. There it is, just over the clouds there. And there as well are these dipping in and out of existence little drakes or dragons. But they only appear for a moment. There's two there, 3, 4, but When you look at them, those aren't normal dragons or whatever the hell they are. They look like completely still objects. But what it actually is it's just being flung around at random. It's completely idle. I feel like there's meant to be drakes or dragons or whatever they are flying around the base of the jagged peaks. When you look over at them, they're meant to be flying around. Just like a little sort of thing, say, hey, there's life over there. It's the dragon peaks or whatever. Sure. But when you look at them, they do not look like they're in control. They look like they're just being flung around by the wind. Or worse, they're essentially just dead and being flopped about. But if we look at it from a dev POV, I feel like they just forgot to animate them, or they've chosen not to animate them to avoid taking up processing power or something for the background. I'm sure they didn't expect most people to stand here and look really hard at this one spot, but sure enough, they look so derpy. I had no idea about this. There's no way I ever would have known without that comment, so thank you BKMY. Great spot. But there you have it, a newer set of things you might not have known about. As always, if you have anything you'd like to add to today's topics, or maybe something new to suggest that we highlight in a video, let us know in the comments. We might just talk about it. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.